had a very, very productive meeting. We're not talking about games. We're talking about national security.
The president giving his most forceful case for the wall. If they don't get a deal, he may declare a national emergency.
And if Congress will not fund border security and that border wall, then President Trump should use his authority to make sure that he protects Americans.
Economists praising the huge new job report under the Trump economy.
Well, most of the things in our agenda are about bipartisan issues.
Democrats are now in power. Look at that agenda. It's not so bipartisan.
Congressman, do you stand by your comments?
Newly elected Congresswoman Tlaib literally dodges reporters after vulgar anti-Trump comments.
This incoming Democrat-controlled Congress is the best advertisement for Trump 2020.
Sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. If that's what radical means, call me a radical.
He's only been in Congress a few days, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is dancing.
You guys just want me to dance all morning, and I wanted to tell you.
Whoa, now he's got the spin.
There it is.
Henry 2.0.
2.0. Oh, that's scary.
New hairstyle.
What is that?
New dance moves.
Yeah, fancier
You have to check them
hairstyle.
on the internet if you haven't seen them.
True.
Not doing
Not
that.
bad. Welcome.
Thank
for
you.
being
It's
here.
been great. You guys make the time fly. What can I say?
It's fun, and we're going to be riding a bull apparently.
We are.
At this hour.
Yes.
Yeah, normally you're just flinging the bull. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I
You're
swear.
right. I'm not an expert in bull riding, but I am an expert in bull
Don't say
tossing,
it, Pete.
other things.
Tossing?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the things you come up
You
with.
might say I do it for a living, but why not?
No, it's a new year. It's a new Pete.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Pete 2.0.
Nope.
There you
How
go.
do you regress? How do you go from 1.0? Is it like 0.5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pete .5.
P.5. That's what you're getting in 2019. A more devolved version.
Well, the president is certainly not changing. New year, he has been on the Twitter machine for
Yes.
days now, going after the Democrats. He did it yesterday in the Rose Garden as well, doubling down on his strategy of saying, look, I'm not going to end this government shutdown. In fact, he said it may go on for weeks. It may go on for years, he said to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi behind closed doors. Then he came out to the Rose Garden and said, look, if all else fails, I'll declare a national emergency and have the federal government build the wall without Congress if I
He
have
said he's all in. This is what he tweeted this morning. He said the Democrats could solve the shutdown problem in a very short period of time. All they have to do is approve real border security, including a wall, something which everyone other than drug dealers, human traffickers, and criminals want very badly. This would be so easy to do. Well, let's get someone from inside the White House to react this morning. Hogan Gidley, White House Deputy Press Secretary, joins us on Fox and Friends. Hogan, thanks for being here.
Welcome.
Good morning, guys. Thanks so much for the time.
Good morning. Good morning. Great to have you. So, your boss tweeting this morning, waiting for Democrats to come to the table on the wall. They say they won't give it $1. Well, they'll give it $1, but that's it. Where are we?
It's incredible. I'll tell you where we are, though, and the president knows this. He's been articulating this beautifully to the American people. We're in a national security crisis right now and a humanitarian crisis. The situation we face along the border is no longer tenable, and the Democrats are offering status quo solutions to a crisis situation. I was in the Rose Garden and watched the president speak yesterday. I was in both meetings a couple of days ago and then yesterday in the Situation Room. And what I can't believe is Democrats didn't know any of the statistical data. They didn't believe the data. And they didn't care. And that's what probably is the most stunning and sad part of this is when career officials at DHS are telling them numbers and data about deaths across this country and drugs pouring into this country, Democrats didn't want to hear any of it. In fact, we've arrested almost 250,000 people in this country here illegally last year, and they account for 100,000 instances of assault, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 homicides. That means 4,000 people are dead in this country today because of illegal immigration and the Democrats' refusal to come to the table to fix this problem. All of those deaths are 100% preventable. And Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer right now haven't lifted a finger to solve it.
Hogan, I think Democrats are getting a little bit nervous because they know that border security is an issue that resonates with a lot of people. Senator Chuck Schumer trying to flip that narrative, saying he told Trump not to hold Americans hostage. Take a listen. We'll get your reaction.
We made a plea to the president once again. Don't hold millions of Americans, hundreds of thousands of workers hostage. Open up the government and let's continue the discussions. He said he'd keep the government closed for a very long period of time, months or even years.
It's a stare down.
Yep.
Look,
Sure
what the president said was, I'm going to do everything in my power, the constitutional duty, an oath I swore to do, to protect the American people. Democrats don't want to do that part of it. It seems like they're for border security, but they vote every time against all the measures we've put forward to protect those same families across this country. For the life of me, I can't figure out this watershed moment in politics in which an entire political party has decided they are going to stand with people who are here in this country. Hundreds of thousands of them come every year illegally and unlawfully, as opposed to hundreds of millions of American citizens. They did it a year ago during the Schumer shutdown, and they're doing it right now. All they have to do is come to the table. We need about 10 senators to come forward and say, yes, we'll vote for your security measures, Mr. President. And you guys saw a watershed moment when the President of the United States, for the first time, came into the briefing room since he was elected as president. He walked into that briefing room with people from ICE and Customs Border Protection, national security folks, to say, here's what, not what the president wants, here's what we need to protect the American people. And they said that included a wall, and Democrats don't want any part of it.
Yeah, and I wonder if you can react to two things, Hogan, which is you were kind enough to take us into the room there. We showed that picture of the Situation Room a moment ago. You were talking about the conversation, how Democrats interrupted these career Department of Homeland Security officials, just trying to lay out the facts rather than the rhetoric on all sides. But now take us into the room. What's going to happen this weekend? Because the president in the Rose Garden said yesterday he's deputizing the vice president and others to continue these talks. Democrats try to pour cold water and suggest there's no real progress going to be made this weekend. But also, Pete's been talking all morning about Democrats holding up, quote unquote, experts who they say believe walls don't work.
Well, look, the president's made this very clear many times, whether it's the Vatican, whether it's Israel, whether it's San Diego, whether it's Barack Obama's own personal home, physical barriers are used constantly and have been used for millennia because they work, because they are a time-tested, proven method of security. And what the president is trying to say is the American people deserve that same level of security. Physical barriers save lives, and everyone knows that. But after all the rhetoric we've been talking about the last several days, the complete obstinance on the part of the Democrat Party at this point on this issue to protect the American people, the president still remains optimistic. He's called together the team, as you mentioned, of Jared Kushner, the vice president is leading it, and Secretary Nielsen to have a conversation with staffs today over in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. You guys know it well, right next to the White House, to have a conversation to try and get some things down on paper that we can all agree on. National security is paramount to this president. We have to protect the American people, but also the humanitarian crisis, as I mentioned before. The president said this in the Rose Garden. Children are being exploited, used multiple times now, coming across the border as shields, as cover to try and get illegal people into this country. We're talking human traffickers, child smugglers, drug cartels are using our loopholes, are using this porous border. Don't forget, 85% of the people who come into this country illegally come in between those ports of entry. We have a massive problem, and it's no longer status quo, it's a crisis.
I just don't know if you have a serious negotiating partner on the other side. You use the word illegally. You're talking about people on the left whose base says that no person can be illegal. I mean, that I word is almost a swear word for them. And Nancy Pelosi has dug her heels in and said a wall is immoral. Do you really think there's wiggle room to get $5 billion for a wall? Or is that why the president has said months or years, if necessary, because I'm not moving?
Well, he's not moving because he's not going to sacrifice the safety and the security of the American people. That is something he will not compromise on. How the final bill looks, I'm not going to negotiate here from this seat, but the president demands enough money, enough funding to protect the American people. And let's be clear. This isn't just a campaign pledge or a campaign promise. This is something that affects all Americans, that career officials at ICE, at Customs Border Protection, at the Department of Homeland Security say they need to protect the American people to do their job. That's what they've sworn to do. And we see people who've put their lives on the line, men and women on the border. They're the ones giving this information to the Democrat Party, saying, we're not doing this for political motivation. We're doing it to protect the American people.
Hogan, another area where the president is delivering on his campaign promises is the economy, and big numbers coming out of the jobs report. 312,000 jobs added, a 3.2% wage increase year over year, 3.9% unemployment rate. How do you think this is being received throughout the country? And is this, looking toward, 2020, is this going to be the chief issue? Is it going to be the economy? Is it going to be immigration? Is it going to be these issues that President Trump has been stressing this whole time and delivering on?
Yeah, he's seen record-setting accomplishments in record-setting time. Everyone thought the economy would go in the tank. It would have irreparable damage. You could not ever bounce back from it, I think the New York Times editorial page said when this president was elected. And look at us now, soaring to heights we never saw under the previous administration. Included in that report you just mentioned, 72% of the people now with jobs came from the sidelines. They weren't even looking for jobs before under the previous administration because the jobs weren't there. Now we have more jobs than people looking. This president has created something that no one saw coming, probably, as the great Larry Kudlow would say, the most undertold story of the entire presidency. Hopefully people in the media will focus on the economy. And it was ironic leading into the midterms. The media didn't talk about the economy one time except to deride the president for not talking about how good the economy was going into the midterms, which he did at every turn. So it was just ridiculous to see them try and hem and haw around the facts that actually real Americans, real people from coast to coast are having better lives because of this president's policy.
Well, you got some Democrats now talking about increasing tax rates to 70%. We'll see what that might do to the economy. Hogan Gidley, we appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. Good morning, guys.
We're going to turn now to some headlines for you, saluting a fallen hero. A California police corporal gunned down by an illegal immigrant will be laid to rest today. Thousands paid their respects to Corporal Ronald Singh during an emotional procession.
He was a great guy. He was always smiling.
He was a good man. He'll be missed, and it's the kind of officer that we want.
Singh was killed during a traffic stop just hours after spending Christmas with his wife and infant son. A community is mourning the loss of the 5 kids killed in a fiery highway crash. Several people gathering at a vigil in Louisiana overnight. It was held at a sister worship center of that church that took the kids on a trip to Disney World in Florida when a semi slammed into their van. That semi driver, the kids, and another driver all died. Several others were taken to the hospital, some with critical injuries. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren kicks off her 2020 presidential campaign in Iowa.
I was pulled into this because I have watched how America's middle class has been hollowed out. I am in this fight for working families.
She's in the fight. The left's first declared major candidate is set to make a second appearance this morning after launching an exploratory committee on Monday. And those are your headlines. She's in the fight for sure. I'll tell you that.
But don't miss the fact that she said the middle class has been hollowed out right after we talked about the jobs numbers, unemployment.
Yeah.
It's going to be a hard message.
Well, they live in an alternate universe with rainbows and unicorns and everything is free. What do you expect?
Get Pocahontas a Michelob Ultra now.
It's Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Whatever you want to say.
Coming up.
It's a free country.
It's only been 2 days. Some Democrats already calling for impeachment.
She said Michelob Ultra was her favorite. That's no one's favorite beer, ever.
All right, some Democrats are already calling for impeachment.
We're going to go in there, we're going to impeach them.
Not all Democrats on board with the I word. We'll break down the backlash.
Plus, forget the wall. Critics say it's too expensive. So instead, Democrats want more drones at the border and lots of money for people in other countries. They say that will protect us. But will it? Our next guest is a drone expert who's going to bring us the truth.
A big concrete wall is expensive and doesn't work. Whereas drones, you don't just need fencing. You need drones,
cell phone towers, satellites, drones, the things that the experts have said are necessary to improve border security.
Forget the wall. Democrats think more drones are the answer to solving the border crisis.
But our next guest, who has used drones to hunt terrorists, says their plan is destined to fail. Here with more is Brett Velikovich, a former Special Operations Intel analyst and author of Drone Warrior. Brett, you're the perfect guest to have here right now.
Hey, good morning to you.
Is it true that you don't need a wall if you have enough drones?
Well, look, I mean, when I see this, it's clear to me that the Democrats clearly have no idea how drone technology actually works. Because if they did, they would know that more drones are not an adequate solution to this all-encompassing problem. Pete, look, we have a serious issue here where 2,000 to 3,000 reported illegal immigrants are trying to penetrate our borders every single day. I mean, when I hear that, it sounds like I'm sitting on a military base about to be overrun. You could put all the drones in the U.S. government's arsenal along the border, and it still would not be enough to solve this problem. Yes, look, drones can help in certain situations. They can help provide a common operating picture and intelligence information to the Border Patrol, but in this case, in this particular instance, they are no substitute for more manpower and a physical barrier. An actual wall is going to be needed in this case, and drones can help supplement that effort.
So that would be the key, to have a combination of a wall and drones. Could that be the answer to solving the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has to be. They're already using drone technology already, but the truth is, if you look at facts, the CBP has been using Predator drones for a while now, and there was statistics that showed the drone technology was not an adequate solution. It did not provide, it was very cost effective. It did not provide a solution, an overall solution to the problem. You've got a lot of terrain to cover, okay? Yeah. Look, when I was hunting terrorists in Iraq, we were hunting individuals. Drones are meant to be surgical. We're talking about a massive amount of people. You just cannot operate that way, and especially unless the Dems want to put Hellfire missiles on these things, there's no finishing capability. What do you do with that information?
Well, you got to have someone there to intercept the person ultimately. Brett, I've been through the same process in the military. If you're setting up a defense, you want obstacles. But we were taught in the infantry time and time again in setting up a defensive position, an obstacle without oversight, without the ability to look at it, is almost useless. So you got to have a wall, because you need it as a baseline, but then you got to have people to man it, watch it, and make sure it's actually being enforced. It's a layered effect, yet they want to get rid of the first step.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And look, the fact is drones can be used, but when you look at this is such a bigger problem that they can't be used effectively without some sort of physical barrier. There was $135 billion reportedly spent by taxpayers on illegal immigration over the last year, and only $19 billion was provided back to us by illegal immigrants at the federal, state, and local level for taxes. And so when you look at President Trump, he's probably looking at these numbers and saying, we're just one big nonprofit here. We got to do something, and it's an emergency. It's an emergency, okay? We need real effective solutions right now, and we need it immediately. We just can't sit here and continue to wait for this.
Hey, Democrats on the Hill, if you need an expert, Brett Velikovich is your man.
Go.
He should give you a call. We appreciate your time this morning. They're not going to. They could if they wanted real facts. Appreciate it. Good stuff. All right, well, move over career politicians. Republicans introducing an amendment to the Constitution that would impose term limits on members of Congress. We'll bring that to you on the other side. Welcome back. So quick football headlines for you. It's wild card weekend in the NFL. The Colts and Texans kick off the action in Houston at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Then on Fox, the Dallas Cowboys host the Seattle Seahawks at 8:15 Eastern. I am so ticked off that my Vikings blew it last weekend. I can't even talk about it. I'll be watching anyway. All right, but you might want tickets for college football's national championship game instead right now on StubHub. Prices are plummeting as low as $105. Last year, cheap seats cost $1,700. Alabama and Clemson square off at 8 p.m. Eastern on Monday. Maybe Alabama fatigue? I don't know. Wow. And the family of Alabama's quarterback is taking advantage of those falling ticket prices. I can't pronounce that name. Tua Tagovailoa. Ed, help me.
Viola.
Thank you. Is expecting more than 400 family members to attend the championship game in California, most of them traveling from his home state of Hawaii. Good on him.
Well, that's nice.
Ed, thanks for helping me out.
All right, move over, career politicians. GOP lawmakers are now introducing an amendment to the Constitution that would impose term limits on members of Congress. The bill calls for a maximum of 3 two-year terms in the House and 2 six-year terms in the Senate. But will this get any traction on the Hill? Let's ask one of the bill's sponsors, Republican Congressman Francis Rooney of Florida. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
We appreciate it. We want to let you make the case. We've been talking all morning about how Democrats have introduced, for example, these efforts to abolish the Electoral College, and we've been breaking that down and wondering whether that's an overreach. State your case and push back on the critics who say this is an overreach.
Well, the founders never envisioned a professional political class. They've envisioned, you know, like Thomas Jefferson, people come off of their farm or leave their business, do public service, and go home and have some new people come in with fresh ideas. This is a much more a better way than having these entrenched politicians who are too aligned with special interest over a period of years. I would think 18 years is plenty of time to serve your country in Congress.
Well, Congressman, the president talked, as you know, in the campaign about draining the swamp, and apparently there are some voters who believe a key part of that is your move. Look at this poll from McLaughlin and Associates. 82% of likely voters approve of a constitutional amendment limiting terms of members of Congress. Only 9% disapprove. This is from about 1 year ago, January 2018. If there's so much public support, though, Why has this not gotten traction before?
Maybe that's why Congress has an 11% approval rating among the people. Maybe the Beltway is not the country. Maybe the country's the country. You know, if you take that figure, you could find that replicated or broken down in all kinds of subsets, socioeconomic, different interest groups. Nobody wants career politicians. They want term limits. And, you know, I'm just a business guy. I figure if 80% of my customers want something, my job's to figure out how to get it to them.
So, Congressman, I only have a minute left. You know the argument against it, and I want to articulate that now. In part is you have congressional staffers who sometimes stick around for 30 years, and they learn arcane tax policy or health care policy. You have lobbyists who stick around for decades as well. If you move out the politicians, don't you give the lobbyists and the staffers even more power?
But that's an argument that the people are too dumb to be governed in a democracy. I haven't found this legislative business to be particularly difficult. It's a whole lot more difficult to drill a 10,000-foot oil well than it is to be a legislator.
Congressman Francis Rooney making his case this morning. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you very much, Ed.
All right. Meanwhile, a basketball team with triplets. Did they use their bench to get some extra points? The bizarre strategy you have to see to believe. And this congresswoman yelled profanities about impeaching America's president, but then ran away from the media. Joe Concha is up next with why Democrats can't seem to... It's that we're all back together. It's a new year.
Okay. Well,
I'm here.
Did you really need to ask that? I'm sorry. I don't know. Sometimes
Ed is my new favorite on the show.
And it is extra special because we have Michael Knowles, one of our favorite guests. He's, of course, the host of the Michael Knowles Show. Good morning, sir.
Welcome.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you. We've been talking all morning about how Democrats made this solemn promise, really, to the American people. We need to take the country back from Donald Trump in the midterms, and we're going to do it by focusing on the economy and focusing on health care, and we're going to be all about decency and the American way. What happened? What happened?
Well, it was a tough jobs number for them to focus on the economy. And I have to tell you, this incoming Democrat-controlled Congress is the best advertisement for Trump 2020. Donald Trump, he's not the most polite guy in the world. Rashida Tlaib saying we're going to impeach the mother effer makes him look polite by comparison. This is no small feat. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calling for upwards of an 82.7% tax rate for some Americans makes Donald Trump look moderate by comparison. Donald Trump thrives on adversaries. He now has an entire house full of them, and it's this optic choice. The GOP Congress, I'm sorry to say, was not passing very much legislation, so now at least Americans can see the difference. You've got one part of the Congress being controlled by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the new face of the Democrats. Then the face of the incoming Republicans. Who is it? It's Dan Crenshaw. It's Jim Baird. Yeah. It's American heroes who have sacrificed for their country. That's a juxtaposition and a choice that I want Americans to see all day long.
Michael, we're going to get to Alexandria in a minute, but some of the legislation that Democrats are pushing, articles of impeachment, presidential candidates required to release tax returns, can't imagine who that's targeting, Mueller protection bill, abolishing the Electoral College because a lot of them are a bunch of sore losers and they want to try to change a system into something where they can win. So what do you make of that? I mean, do the American people see through that? And does the Democratic base of voters, are they getting angry looking at that?
They certainly see through that. It's all bark and no bite. You look at what issues matter to Americans. They care about immigration. Donald Trump has played his hand perfectly here on the government shutdown. They care about the economy. The jobs numbers that are coming out look great, and the stock market is reacting to that. They don't care about a politician's tax returns. Nobody cares at all. And so fortunately now, you've got this one part of the Congress, you've got the House of Representatives, calling for all of these crazy radical reforms, sore loser bills because they can't convince voters to give them the White House. They can't convince voters to give them the Senate. But then you've got the presidency who can rebut that, who can fight against that. And you've got the Senate as a backstop. So I don't think you're going to see impeachment anytime soon. You're just going to see more of this reality TV show political game. And unfortunately for the Democrats, Donald Trump is the master of reality TV.
Yeah. Well, Michael, one of your favorite socialists, she's not known for her modesty. She seemed to double down on thinking highly of herself. Here she is in an interview. Watch.
Once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. But as you climb up this ladder, you should be contributing more. It only has ever been radicals that have changed this country. Abraham Lincoln made the radical decision to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. Franklin Delano Roosevelt made the radical decision to embark on establishing programs like Social Security. You know, if that's what radical means, call me a radical.
Call her a radical.
She's talking about Lincoln bringing liberty, okay, and now she's saying we want to shackle you with taxes. I mean, she doesn't even understand what she's saying.
Ed, don't you remember when Abraham Lincoln instituted an 83% tax rate? Don't you remember? Maybe my history is a little shaky.
Yeah.
This is all we could ask for. You now have open socialists in the Congress, and I'm glad that we're having an honest conversation. I think for a long time, Democrats and the left tried to hide their socialist tendencies. At least now it's coming out there. Do we think that Americans want to work 83% of the time for the government? I don't think so. Do we? Unfortunately, history is not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's strong suit, and so she's misrepresenting American history. She misrepresents her own history, too. She pretends that she grew up in the Bronx. She didn't. She grew up in a very affluent suburb of New York. I know. I grew up in the town next to her. And they do this all the time. Socialists who come out of privilege pretend to be working-class heroes to defend their ridiculous policies. Americans see right through that.
Well, you were in a bit of a Twitter spat, you might say, recently with her. She tweeted this. She said, "Don't be fooled by the plaques that we got. I'm still Alex from the Bronx." To which, you know, it's quippy. You replied,
"The trouble is that she's not, of course."
Yeah, you
know
replied by saying you didn't.
I grew up in the town right next to her.
Yes, you tweeted, you didn't grow up between two worlds. You grew up in Westchester, then lied about it, then changed your bio when the lie was exposed. I grew up in the low affluent, high diverse neighborhood town, spent many weekends in the Bronx. The difference, I don't lie about my upbringing to feign victimhood. She didn't like you pointing that out.
She was very upset. She was tweeting about it for a whole day. The reason I point this out, by the way, is not just to pick on Alexandria. It's not because I don't like her or something. It's because, one, she uses this lie, this fake narrative of her upbringing to excuse her blithe ignorance. She pretends to have not grown up in privilege, not had access to the best schools. She really did. She should know these things. She should be able to answer basic economic and historical questions. But also, this is what socialists always do. They have to pretend to be the working class heroes. They have to pretend that they're speaking for the poor, that they're speaking for the oppressed. There's nothing oppressed about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Elizabeth Warren or Barack Obama or Bernie Sanders. And socialism is not the way to fix poverty. It never has. It has bred human misery. It has destroyed economies. The way to lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty in just the last several decades is capitalism, it's free markets, and we're seeing the effects of that because of this administration.
Yeah, you're right.
We look forward to your next Twitter battle with Ocasio-Cortez.
Keep it going, brother.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a good weekend. Thanks.
We're going to turn now to your headlines. The terrorist behind the USS Cole bombing is believed to be dead after a U.S. airstrike. Officials say the al-Qaeda militant was hit while driving in Yemen. He's been on the FBI's most wanted list, accused of blowing up part of the warship while it was refueling. The 2000 attack killed 17 American sailors. Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Liz Cheney sparring on Twitter after Cheney promises to, quote, fight the fraud of socialism. Sanders firing back by claiming her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, lied about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction leading up to that war. Cheney responding regarding to socialism in part, quote, it steals power from the people and gives it to the government, crushes human freedom and initiative, and devastates economies. Ask the Venezuelans. By the way, your Dick Cheney history is as defective as your economic policy. Ooh. Wow. The spat comes as Senator Sanders claimed he was a little bit busy as 2016 allegations of sexual misconduct among his staff were not addressed. Former House Speaker Paul Ryan is spotted on his first day out of Congress. The DailyMail.com snapping these photos of an unshaved Ryan taking his kids to school in Wisconsin. The former speaker didn't answer reporters' questions about missing Capitol Hill, which he gave up to be a full-time dad. And that's your headlines. Right. Yeah, I think he's pretty happy right now.
Showing off for Wisconsin?
Give it 2 weeks. We'll see.
We'll see.
Right, Rick?
He's going to like the beard for 2 weeks, though.
He's going to like the beard.
I like the beard. It's a good look.
Then he's going to be
does
like,
that every time he goes on vacation. He keeps it for a little while, eventually loses it.
Rick, next time you come back from vacation, keep the beard.
Keep it. We want to see it.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Record that?
I have no power.
Somebody record
I have
that
no power,
right
but I
now.
give you approval.
I have somebody's recording it so I can show that to the bosses as soon as I come back with that beard. But thank you, Pete. I would appreciate that. All right, let's talk a little bit of weather out there. No real cold anywhere across the lower 48, which is not bad for January, although a little bit odd. In fact, we've been really well above average all across the eastern seaboard. I think we're going to eat the eastern two-thirds of the country. Will likely stay that way probably for at least about another week and a half. Florida, where you've been around 15 degrees above average down across central Florida. Front finally moved through, and that is dropping your temperatures down to where you kind of typically would be this time of year. And out across the west, that's where temps have been a little bit below normal. A new storm moving on in is going to bring some rain and some mountain snow to Southern California this time, which is very, very needed. You'll also see this across the desert Southwest, and that kind of stormy pattern sticks with us all weekend long. All right, guys.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, well, coming up, the Electoral College gave President Trump a historic victory in 2016. Now one Democrat wants to get rid of it. But isn't this what our founding fathers warned us about?
Little history lesson coming up. And a criminal decided to pick on a senior citizen who also happened to be, yes, a former kickboxing champ.
Yes.
We'll show you how it all ended. Spoiler alert.
And still had
well.
White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley and Representative Francis Rooney. They're going to join us, too.
A couple of quick headlines for you. A mugger knocked out by a senior citizen who happens to be a 5-time world kickboxing champ. 68-year-old Steve Shepard fighting back after the suspect smashed a bottle over his head and then demanded his cell phone. Shepard suffered minor injuries. The robber got away, but with broken ribs. Wrong pick there. And CNN is getting slammed for a report that claims hundreds of TSA workers are calling in sick because of the shutdown. A Homeland Security spokesman tweeting this, quote, "More fake news from the inventors of fake news, CNN. Security operations at airports have not been impacted by a non-existent sick out. CNN has the cell numbers of multiple TSA public affairs professionals, but rather than validate the stats, they grossly misrepresented them." Ed?
Oh, boy.
Teach your journalists something.
All right. Pete enjoyed that one. The Democrats took control of the House on Thursday, and Congressman Steve Cohen from Tennessee wasted no time introducing a bill to, yes, get rid of the entire Electoral College. In a statement, he said, quote, "Americans expect and deserve the winner of the popular vote to win office. More than a century ago, we amended our Constitution to provide for the direct election of U.S. senators. It is past time," he says, "to directly elect our president and vice president."
But how far off is this from what the founding fathers intended? Here to weigh in is author, lawyer, and Electoral College expert, Tara Ross. Thank you so much, Tara, for joining us. Now, the founding fathers wanted to protect against the tyranny of the majority and to protect these smaller states so that a president would have, someone running for president would have incentive to go to these smaller states and listen to their issues and not just play to states like New York and California. What are Democrats missing here?
Well, if you read Twitter yesterday, you see all sorts of rhetoric about how the Electoral College was created only because of slavery. And it's a relic of the past. And now we have the internet and we have telephones and we have all of these sorts of modern inventions. So we don't need the Electoral College anymore. And nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is that the founders at the Constitutional Convention were involved in a dialogue about how you create a government that will not suffer from the failures of the past. And of course, in the past, they were looking at the histories of failed democracies where 51% could rule 49%, even when they were being unreasonable or tyrannical or acting in emotion. And they wanted to create something better. They knew we can be self-governing, but we can also put up safeguards so that the mob, an emotional mob, or large states cannot tyrannize over everybody else.
And so basically the Democrats lose in 2016, and the system that they were fine with for generations, all of a sudden they just want to throw it out.
Well, I don't know if they were fine with it before or not, but certainly the 2000 election and the 2016 election have caused a little bit of heartache among Democrats. And I get it. It seems like the system is biased. If you look back, though, at the full history of states voting, what you really see is that it's more like a pendulum. It swings back and forth. At first, the Electoral College seems to favor the red states, and then it seems to favor the blue states. During the Ronald Reagan years, it seemed like, how could you ever overcome Reagan winning California and Texas all the time? But then, of course, Bill Clinton came along, and we talked about the blue wall, and we talked about how a Republican could never overcome the huge advantage that everybody thought that Hillary Clinton had. And now, of course, we're looking at the situation where Democrats are saying the Electoral College is biased against them.
Well, Tara Ross, thank you for that history
Thanks so
lesson.
much.
Not a lot of people knew that, and we're glad that you reminded them. Appreciate it. All right, Chuck Schumer demanding the president open up the government for the sake of the people, he says.
Don't hold millions of Americans, hundreds of thousands of workers hostage.
But isn't it the American people the president says he's trying to protect? Well, the White House Deputy Press Secretary will join us live at the top of the hour with an update on the shutdown talks.
But first, we are busting the myths about car seats that every parent needs to know. That's coming up next.
Can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again.
With all that USAA offers, why go with anybody else? We know their rates are good. We know that they're always going to take care of us.
Seat belts and car seats are critical when keeping your child safe, but there are more misconceptions about them than you might think.
Yes, here to clear up some of the myths about car seats is Good Housekeeping chief technologist and mom of two, Rachel Rothman. Rachel, thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right, so these are all familiar pieces of equipment to me.
Yes.
But when, how much, how old?
So the when is actually a big misconception. So the really important thing is that you get the right car seat based upon the weight and height of your child.
Okay.
So first we have an infant car seat, and another misconception is that the latch versus the seatbelt may be safer. And in truth, they're both really safe options. So what I'm referring to, if you have no idea about car seats,
that would be
is the lower anchor and tether for children that's latched. So in newer vehicles, they have these anchors that make it super easy to install. It's not in every car spot, and depending upon the manufacturer, it may or may not be the best option.
So when I get a rental car, I usually use the seatbelt.
Just as safe is what I'm saying. Make sure that you install it properly. So another thing is that a lot of times people don't realize it has to be really tight. So when you install it, whether you're doing it with the anchors or you're doing it with the seatbelt, is to make sure that you can't jostle it more than an inch, side to side or forward to back. So once it gets clicked in, you want to make sure you can't jostle it at all. And every single time you want to go back and make sure you're tightening it, because when the child is driving with you, it may be moving around a little bit. Another thing is that once you do go to front facing, so after your child outgrows either the highest height or the weight, you're going to switch to front facing. And that's usually after 2 years of age. So you were saying you have a 1.5-year-old.
I have a 1.5-year-old, and she's ready to be front facing.
What's her height? What's her weight? What's your car? But I was saying attitude. Keep rear facing.
I don't think
that's better for it. But when you're doing front facing, you want to make sure you're using that top tether. So in a lot of vehicles, it's on the top of the car, maybe behind the seat. So look in the instruction manual of your vehicle to find
the thing on the top.
Exactly, right there. Exactly, you're pointing to it right there.
That one can be a pain, though. You got to go into the trunk.
Do it. It makes it safer so that it's not jostling around. And they're experts in this. So there's child passenger safety technicians. They've gone through, rigorous studies to make sure that they're able to install it. And you can go to a hospital, you can go to a fire station, and they'll let you know that these technicians are there to make sure that it's in properly. And at home, another thing is with the harnesses. A lot of people don't realize, they're like, I don't want my child to be in too tight. Snug is best. You want to make sure that you can't pinch any of the netting on it. That's really critical so that they're not going to be moving around. And now it's winter. You're going to have them in a winter coat. You actually don't want that underneath them. You want to make sure you put them in the car seat and then put blankets or the jackets over.
On top. Oh, that's a great
compress
tip.
if you get in an accident, and then it's actually going to be too loose.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Where can folks learn more?
GoodHousekeeping.com, and you can get some of our top recommendations as well as more expert insights on how to properly install them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Got more Fox and Friends on the other side.
What she said.